Thank you, Ayla. Thank you all for joining us for this session. And we'll, I think, keep limited introductions and presentations, which we will leave some room for Q&A at the end of our panel. Again, welcome. This is a second joint panel with Ahval News Online and CEFTUS, Center for Turkish Studies. We were in Liverpool last year, again touching subjects linked with Turkey. But this one is interesting because this is a meeting under extraordinary circumstances with the political ground, under Great Britain is shattered, and not a bit of this turmoil is a surprise to any of us gathered around this table, because we have the experience and memory. All the elements of global disorder has been in place for some time. As a signal flares in Turkey, sort of a pioneering country for disorder, which of course is in a much deeper uncertainty these days for more or less in the last decade, I would say, past 7 years or so. And more so, the uncertainty, I think, due to severe mismanagement of President Erdogan, brought in the past 3 years, I would say, that evolved into an urgent crisis, a multi-layered one, a systemic crisis, so to speak. And we have been, as journalists, following this with intense care and attention, because it's a wonderful minefield and a gold mine for journalists, although it has very dark, shady parts. Turkey's entire administrative system is now crackling. Its foreign policy is in shambles. Social tensions are increasing. It's sort of a powder keg, in a way, lately. And as does the oppression. Its rule of law is nearly demolished, toothless, all against the background of the deepening economic crisis, of course, which is the main factor for all the decline, demise that we are observing. Darker clouds, as if the current ones are not enough, are ahead in the coming months. I have almost no good news for you, except tiny ones, maybe some sort of flickers that may show flickers at the end of the tunnel, not the light, I think is the correct description from my point of view. This overall situation in the country is bleak, and this promises us, to be optimistic, a lot of patience, I think. Well, what has been happening? On the downside, which is a very large area, a depressing chain of events keep going on, continuing. Unchanged is the state of the oppressed and the streams of opposition, scattered. Human rights are severely bruised. According to the latest Human Rights Watch data, nearly 50,000 people are held in prisons as detained or sentenced on absurd accusations, most of them, backed by utterly problematic indictments, and they are easily defined as political prisoners. Largest bulk of these belong to the grassroots of the Gülen movement, whose leader, Fethullah Gülen, is seen by the authorities as the mastermind behind the botched coup 3 years ago. About 35,000 of them are behind bars of the Gülen movement, according to, again, HRW. The rest, about 10,000, are Kurds, linked with the third largest party in parliament, elected party in parliament, and the rest, some tiny groups belonging to the leftist movements, extreme leftist movements. This data per se places Turkey, which is still a negotiator with the European Union for membership, on top of the regimes that hold largest bulk of, again, political prisoners, which is a sort of an oxymoron, I think. The overall capacity of the Turkish prisons are about 200,000 and 210,000. Currently, according to the latest statements by an official, 286,000 people are in prisons. This is noted by the latest visit in Silivri prison by the Parliamentary Commission. The inmates, they said, are sleeping in turns. They're so filled. In those sharing cells, isolated or not, are 135 journalists, some sentenced to aggravated lifetime sentences, such as author Ahmet Altan, whose book, I Will Never See the Light of the Day, I think the correct title, is now nominated in Gifford Prize in the United Kingdom. Politicians like Selahattin Demirtas or Figen Yüksekdağ, former leaders of HDP party, are there. And philanthropists, benevolent businessmen like Osman Kavala are just other examples of twisted justice system, completely tied to the mercy of a single man, President Erdogan. Administrative justice is also subservient to the political executive. In a move that has no place in universal wisdom or practice of democracy, 3 elected Kurdish mayors were brutally replaced by government trustees in Diyarbakir, Mardin, and Van, as also many other Kurdish elected local politicians were removed from the city councils. In short, the judiciary remains tightly subordinated to Erdogan government, which now rules the country more or less from the palace, sidelining in many layers the legislative, the parliament, in which the opposition is stripped of many rights in terms of checks and balances, as the HDP, pro-Kurdish party, is on the edge of facing a closure case, as its deputies face daily harassments. Parliament has for long turned into a rubber stamp office. The fact also remains that about 93% of the media has absolutely no editorial independence. It's acting as a mouthpiece for an autocratic rule, with massive waves of fake news, lies, and severe disinformation. The public in general, as a consequence, kept in the dark, as a tiny group of weak alternative print press in Turkey and online news sites struggle to disseminate the truth. These elements combined show a clear-cut case of power grab, which Erdogan has successfully succeeded with through a series of what we can call coups in the past 5 years. It was a series of coups, minor and major. He's more or less in full control of the state institutions, backed by segments of bureaucracy, keen on impunity, continued impunity, and arbitrary decisions. He has all the security mechanisms seemingly in his grip, lately the army. But is it really so? That is where I end the bad news side and go to the maybe some things, flickers of hope at the end of the tunnel. We enter a less bleak mark here. Despite the gains of a full-scale one-man rule, the ground on which Erdogan is standing or walking has been showing some interesting cracks lately. The entire opposition owes this not to itself, not to its own existent, non-existent unity, nor to its limited, restricted struggle, but perhaps not strangely enough, Erdogan's own erratic moves were the game changers, and it has led to these erratic moves lately has led to profound corruption and deepening economic quagmire. The currency is devalued more than 40% in a year or so. Unemployment is rising by nearly 60,000 people per month, and it's getting out of control. Growth has slowed down to a standstill, maybe negative, and the recession becomes chronic. Investments have stopped. Foreign and domestic confidence is gone. And the source of mine from business lately told me that, quote, everyone now their heads behind the trenches, doing nothing, waiting for the man to go. Until then, nothing. If the economy is the prime factor for the slow motion turn, Erdogan's isolation in the palace is the second. His party structures are marred by discontent about him, his own people, which showed clearly in the latest local election results. The AKP, this seemingly invisible giant of Erdogan, lost 6 major cities, greater municipalities, all of them. And this is thanks to the Kurdish tactical vote for the opposition alliance candidates in all of them. And adding to the losses, of course, HDP, pro-Kurdish party, again showed how solid it has been in mainly Kurdish provinces. Then, at that critical moment, Erdogan made another major, perhaps bigger mistake, by denying the result of Istanbul elections, which he had lost only by some 12,000 votes. In an absurd twist, he had the vote annulled and saw himself humiliated again in the repeat elections by 800,000 votes, bringing back Ekrem İmamoğlu, the sort of charismatic leader, candidate of the alliance, opposition alliance of the CHP, as the mayor again. So this is certainly a grand defeat of Erdogan, and it's certainly meaning a rupture point for his rule. And as expected, he's now busy, based on his reflexes of survival, doubling down on oppression measures. So what will happen now? And what do we expect at this current conjuncture? Certainly it's a watershed for Turkey, and we are entering a very critical period of deeper uncertainty in the coming months, with all the cards on the table. And there are actually two viewpoints, or two opposing views of what to expect. The optimistic viewpoint is that Erdogan is finished, as an exaggerated way of putting it. Some columnists viewing this optimistically, seeing that it's the beginning of the end for the rule of Erdogan. And the calculation is that it is the massive bleeding of the AKP party that his chain of erratic moves led to, and the corruption thereof. And this will bring about sort of an earthquake from within, which now brings forth 2 different figures, or 3 different figures from within the party as alternatives. It's important to note that in Turkish water sociology, the massive conservative pious water segments are the defining ones, and they will continue to be the defining ones if or whenever the elections are held in Turkish politics. So whoever gathers and attracts these pious votes will be the major player in the continued game of Turkey's, very complicated chess game. And these figures are Ali Babacan and Abdullah Gül, who are still waiting and moving slowly ahead, recruiting people, determined to build a party, possibly at the end of this year. Second is a quick runner. He started the race already, Ahmet Davutoğlu, who resigned from the party, former foreign minister and prime minister. And he's busy now launching his party after the resignation, which is, I think, imminent in the coming weeks. And these 2 figures are to be observed, but particularly Gül and Babacan, because Davutoğlu has a dubious base in the party. And his mistakes, especially in his policies vis-à-vis the Kurdish issue, doesn't make him very popular in those segments. So these calculations that Erdogan is finished is based on this, and also the expectation that the crisis will will go very quickly down and help him bring down. And also there are parts of the optimists who tie their hopes to İmamoğlu, and they base their calculations that in 4 years, to 2023 elections, İmamoğlu will be the candidate and challenging Erdogan perhaps in the elections. Another question mark is, of course, if Erdogan will be elected third time or not. Many constitutional experts are arguing that he should not be. This is unconstitutional. But this is Turkey and manipulations country, and so anything can happen. Anything could be expected. So this is where we are with the optimistic view. The optimistic view can be over-optimistic because it is 4 years. And there are still those forces or minds in the optimistic segment that still underestimate the abilities, the skills, incredible experiences and skills of Erdogan as a politician and brinksmanship. His brinksmanship is incredible, and it's still there. He still may have some cards up his sleeve, and he may prove to be a tough nut to wrestle with. There comes the pessimistic view that given the shaky ground on which the opposition alliance stands, with CHP main opposition, which is many parties within one party like Matrushka babies, and many leader figures acting like the real leader of the party, CHP is still tough puzzle as a player. Where it will stand vis-a-vis the Kurdish issue, nobody knows. So that makes CHP per se as a big continued question mark. Then you have the tiny partner of the opposition alliance, which is İYİ Party, led by Akşener. And this party is an unexpectedly, unpredictable player, let's say, in this game. Because latest rumors say that its leadership is in negotiations with Erdogan as entering the government as a third partner. And these rumors are coming from rather reliable sources. So that may also be a game changer in favor of Erdogan, who will do his utmost to stay in power, no matter what. So pessimistic view also says, pessimistic in terms of, those who really want normalization of Turkey, that Erdogan will push, even stretch it further by trying to build a national grand coalition, national unity coalition, perhaps based with Democrats. If the crisis really hits the fan, he will approach all the players with the argument that this is to be or not to be for Turkey. Everyone should extend their hand, and it will be up to them. So we are facing all these options, all the cards open. Then also, as the last one, which is also causing a lot of concern and worry, in Ankara, elsewhere as well, in Washington, in Brussels, that the way the oppression goes on, the way the doubling down goes on, the way the disunity within the opposition goes on, the way the Kurdish issue remains unresolved, and the way to the extent that Turkey becomes ungovernable, another rupture point, not perhaps a coup, but some sort of sharp rupture point may be also on the table, if things really go the wrong way, keep going the wrong way, the wrongest way. So this is where we are with the political landscape. So as opposed to last year, we were sort of trying to take a snapshot of Turkey, of course, dark Turkey, but a year has passed, and we are looking into an even darker picture at the moment, with a lot more unknowns. This is where I will start. Thank you.